Okay, fantastic. We can get started if you're ready, man.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay, great. Why don't we start with just like introduce yourself and tell us what you do for a living?
All right. My name is James Studarus, and I live in Santa Barbara, California. And I do a handful of things. Um, my main gig is I am an accountant for nonprofit organizations, and my side gig is I do some photography and adventuring, mostly focused on the Northern Lights, and that's what we're here to talk about. So I have a website, stardustexperience.com. My last name autocorrects to Stardust, and that's how I kind of got the Stardust Experience. And I want to obviously take pictures, but the adventure is really what I am looking to achieve and share with people, and have figured out how to see the Northern Lights really successfully and share it with people. That this like bucket list that everybody wants to do is totally achievable, and I can give you some really important tips of how to achieve it and see not only Northern Lights but aurora storms, really strong episodes of Northern Lights.
Amazing. That falls under the classification of a cool job and a really cool autocorrect. Like, it'd be if it like auto corrected to like student, I don't know, anus. That wouldn't be very cool, but Stardust is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll go with
Yeah.
that. I'll go
Oh,
with that.
yeah. So let's bring up a little bit of science for those that might not know it. This like beautiful slash violent thing that happens that is the Northern Lights is it's a solar storm that happens on the sun, and these big electrical explosions are aimed at the Earth in the direction in the Earth's direction that start to like smash into this like shield like barrier of the Earth during the daytime that we can't really see. And this is called it sounds very made up, but the magnetic sphere. I don't even know if I said that right.
Yeah.
But we can't see that when it's happening. Once it actually goes past our planet, kind of like a rubber band, it gets whipped back and snaps back towards the magnetic lines, towards like the solar, the north and south poles on the opposite side of the sun. The opposite side that the sun is shining, i.e., what the scientists call nighttime, making it very visible at night to see the aurora. Then these particles eventually collide with atoms in the Earth's atmosphere, and they smash into oxygen and nitrogen to emit like a fluorescent like light, making like reds and pinks and greens. I think greens are probably the most common, but this is also how I don't know how like neon signs are made as well. It's the same thing. It's like air in a tube mixed with gas. Argon specifically makes like perfect purple, and different gases make different things. Is that keep me? I'm a
Yeah,
little out
sounds
of my
good.
element. A little out of my
Yeah, it sounds
element.
like you're on it.
Okay, cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So tell me a little bit about how you're able to capture the right time. I mean, you're in geographically, you're northern, so you're able to see these things. If you're closer to the north and or south pole, this could be visible for you, i.e., like I don't know, California or northern Canada, Alaska, so on and so forth. So, how are you able to choreograph these storms happening on the sun that eventually collide with Earth?
So it's a good question. There is something called the KP index, or Northern Lights forecast, which will give up to 27 days advance notice when these solar storms are occurring on the sun. So scientists have mapped the sun, and they know when the reactive parts of the sun are facing towards Earth and are emitting these solar flares, these these large gas rings of energy hurtling towards space. And scientists need to know this information so it doesn't um, blow satellites out of orbit and affect our radio communication. So there's some utilitarian reasons to know this information. Uh, so there's this KP index on the NOAA website that updates every Sunday night, and it'll look out 27 days in advance, and it's a 0 to 9 scale. So zero, nothing going on. Um, you the forecast doesn't really usually go above 7, so it's a 0 to 9 scale. But the forecast, if you see like a 4, 5, 6, or even if there is a 7, you know that there's a very good chance that there will be northern lights. And then when you get closer, there will be a 3-day forecast that will confirm the 27-day forecast. It can shift a little bit.
Hmm.
So that's the big take home, is you know what nights will be the aurora storms, the really beautiful aurora storms. So that kind of gives you the when. And then the where. There are essentially halos over the northern and southern hemisphere where the northern lights congregates. Um, and in these aurora ovals, that's where the magnetic pull of the Earth is bringing the northern lights, or the southern lights, the aurora australis, to these areas. So I've been studying the places you can easily get to within these aurora oval, and going when the KP index is going high is high. So I just kind of take these two pieces of information, and it's Fairbanks, Alaska, you know, the Yukon in Canada, um, Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, Iceland, and Syria. I have kind of avoided Russia and Greenland because of logistical reasons, and also Antarctica, again, for logistical reasons. But um, lately, I know the KP index. There'll be Northern Lights. I know the Aurora Oval, where to go, and the last handful of trips, I've also been timing it when I know that there'll be good weather, and I don't get plane tickets until the very end. For example, going to Alaska in the fall or spring, plane tickets stay really flat. So it doesn't really matter if you're getting them 3 weeks before or 3 days before. It's pretty much going to be the same price. So once you have this information, um, you have a very, very good chance to see something incredible. So I've done 19 trips to see the Northern Lights, and I've been successful in all 19. And I can hopefully will keep on learning about how to how to how to make this happen, and also to kind of show people that this bucket list is totally doable.
Yeah, very cool. That's so amazing. Do you have like a science background at all, or is this something that you just kind of picked up
I
on
do,
and
I I don't have a science background. I I I did get a social science environmental studies degree at UC Santa Barbara, so I was interested in the natural world, and I've worked with organizations, protecting land within California. Um, but I went to Iceland with a buddy. We just got rented a van, did a winter trip, and we learned about the KP index, and uh, ended up at this sorcery museum slash restaurant, and they had Wi-Fi, and we found on a map that there were a bunch of people being burned at the stake in this one area of northwest Iceland, and we were like, that's where we need to go see like this aurora storm. And sure enough, we went there. It was like end of the frozen road, and it it must have been an epicenter under the aurora oval, because that night it was coming from the north, the south, the east, the west. It was like every direction. It wasn't just the northern lights, it was like all around us. And you know i I'm just kind of a curious person. I love travel, I love adventure, and it really kind of put everything else. I've been to Nepal to see the tallest mountains in the world. I've been to incredible islands, and this was like out of something like out of fantasy. It was science fiction, and it was like, okay, I just saw something I really can't describe, and I'm gonna come home. And I went 2 weeks later to Alaska. I came home from Iceland, was like, I can't believe I just saw that. And okay, there's another aurora storm coming in Alaska. I've never been to Alaska, and I was on a plane 2 weeks later and saw another aurora storm. And I was like, okay, well, I figured out this equation. And I like numbers. I am an accountant. I help out nonprofit organizations, so I do like numbers, and yeah, and kind of put it together.
Yeah. So real fast, yeah, something that people may not be aware of, the northern lights, they're constantly moving. They I think a lot of people see a lot of images of the northern lights and go, "Oh, wow, that's beautiful." It's probably kinda like when you look up and maybe catch a glimpse of the Milky Way, and it's really still, and it's not moving. The storm you were describing, like you were saying, it's kind of moving all around you. Um, I I don't know. I think that's an amazing thing. But real fast, I wanted to double back. Burning at the stake, you made that sound like it was in current times. You mean in the past they used to burn people at the stake?
Yeah, in
Okay,
the
cool. All right.
past, at 17, 1800s, people were being burned at the stake in Iceland for practicing sorcery. It was illegal to practice sorcery. So
And
that's where that came from.
kind of ironic too, because if you're going to get burned at the stake for sorcery, there's this like magic happening around you at that very location. So that's I wonder if there's any correlation there. What's your take on that?
Uh, yeah, huh, good question.
Um, yeah, and also I haven't seen the Northern Lights myself. Something that's on my bucket list, like you were saying. But I have seen the bioluminescence, and it was one of the most visually amazing things I've seen. And um, the bioluminescence are these I think maybe bacteria. Don't quote me on this. That react to the movement in the water. But it was the most amazing thing I've seen visually without uh, being influenced by hallucinogenics or like drugs for that matter. So being sober and seeing that was quite amazing, quite magical. Do you get that whenever you take people on? You still with me? Hello? Oh no. It's really windy right now, and sometimes my internet will just go away. I'll have like
I
amazing
know.
service,
Yeah, yeah.
and then
Uh,
uh,
cool. Uh, so you were talking about the bioluminescence.
yes. And basically, I was saying if any of this got cut off or I was basically saying it was the most beautiful thing I've seen, not being influenced by hallucinogenics or
Yeah, yeah.
any drugs for that reason for that matter. So
Well, this like the phenomenon with or without psychedelics is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So it kind of takes. I was really into mountains and like seeing like these giant mountains of I I've hiked it for 5 weeks and up all over South America, and the northern lights um, make the mountains look insignificant. And it's I mean, I've been with people who just start yelling. They're just like they're overcome with emotion. So they just start yelling or we had one friend who got dizzy. It was like moving around and swirling so much she was getting dizzy and like had to like kind of slow down. So it really is like nothing that's really comparable. Yes, the bioluminescence, I've seen light bioluminescence and it's nice and it's in the water. But when you have something stretching hundreds of miles long, um, looking like lightning bolts in the sky coming down, dancing and moving. And the thing is, this can go on for 4 or 5 nights. I've had trips where we've had 7 nights in a row of the Northern Lights. Yeah, it might come for only an hour or two per night, but this isn't some eclipse that happens for 90 seconds. This is something that happens for a week, and it's a week straight. And you're just like, oh my God, another night. You're like, yes, another night. This is totally crazy. So um, it would actually be really fun to have your podcast under the Northern Lights and get your reaction with
Oh,
the microphone, because that's what it's really about. Is like somebody, like, I'm a little bit jaded now and like, okay, yeah, there's light happening, but somebody who hasn't seen it, oh my God, there's green and red in the sky and it's moving across, and when it gets really strong, it's white. It's like the picture behind me. It's a white band with like these green tracers and red tracers coming off of it. So yeah, it's really on another level, and it's also finding these peak moments of you can see a little bit of northern lights and some green wispy in the sky that can be mistaken for clouds. But when you have an aurora storm, these are the power of many atomic bombs entering our atmosphere. And it's essentially, it's our atmosphere protecting us, turning this hot gas from high energy into low energy. And the byproduct are these colors, these photons of light that are created.
yeah. Yeah. What would your advice be? I have a coworker who basically I'm gonna quote her. Um, Why would I go to a concert without using psychedelics? Why would I even go? Do you have people who insist on using psychedelics during this trip, or what would your advice be? I guess is the question.
Well, I think the first thing is you don't want to get arrested. So I'm
Uh,
flying to Alaska, Canada, Scandinavia. In Scandinavia, they have a zero point zero 0.02 blood alcohol level while driving around. I've gotten a breathalyzer at 8 in the morning. So,
Whoa,
so you don't really want to mess around. You want to see the Northern Lights, and that's like the priority. Um, yeah, it could be cool to go do that. I'm also operating multiple cameras in front of an icy river, or and I kind of want to have my wits with me.
sure,
Um, and I mean, I guess I would say to your coworker that these are um, these sites are hallucinogenic. So it's already psychedelic.
yeah,
And it's like, I guess sometimes in psychedelic experiences, you kind of are in this dreamscape where you don't know if it's reality or fake. And this is real. I mean, you want to be in a dreamscape awake. That's the goal. You don't want to be in a dreamscape. But I mean, I guess I would recommend the first night, maybe not. And the second night, if you can get a hold of something, go for it, but I'm coming from a different angle where I don't want to get arrested because I'm going to some foreign land. And I'm also operating multiple cameras. And it's so crazy psychedelic that it's not needed. Um, so there's that.
that that yeah, that's how I sort of felt with the bioluminescence. Like this may freak me out a little. Like I wouldn't enjoy it as much if I was altered slightly, and I like having the memory. Like I like having that clear, crystal clear memory and knowing that it wasn't influenced one way or the other. Like I actually saw this. I
Same.
actually experienced this. This wasn't like a trick that that the acid or mushrooms or whatever MDMA was playing a role in. So it was. I think I would probably give the same advice. Like, if you have to do it, if you really want to experience it that way, maybe do a 50-50 where like first night, check it out.
Exactly. I think the first night, go to the concert, have fun, and then the second night, it's like, okay, we'll see you in the concert. Let's go and like we'll see, we'll have the Dreamscape concert now. So
Totally.
I hear you.
Has anything ever gone wrong? Like, sounds like a pretty amazing job to have, and to get paid for. Has anything gone wrong in your did you say it was 19 trips you've executed so far?
I've done 19 trips. A couple of them have been paid, but most of them have been kind of learning experiences.
See?
Um, we had a van get stuck in Iceland, and this was a good story. We got the van stuck in Iceland, and like we couldn't get it out. Like five Russian guys are trying to help push it out, but couldn't do it. Finally, this monster Icelandic monster truck shows up and like yanks us out. And it's the guy's like, "Hey, I'm doing the ice cave tour tomorrow," and so we're like, "Oh, we're doing the cave tour tomorrow with you." And so we didn't think much of it. We go to bed, and then in the middle of the night, we get a banging on the van door. Me and my buddy Tim, and like a good American, I'm like, "Go away." And then there's more banging on the van door, and it's two little Japanese tourists, and they were stranded in the freezing cold of Iceland. And
Oh,
so we let them back in, and we warmed the car up. They were like so concerned that they were causing troubles. Anyway, they were on the ice cave tour as well the next day, and it was like we got the van stuck bad, but Icelandic Viking helped us out, which was great. And then we helped out the Japanese tourists, and then the Japanese tourists and us supported the Icelandic Viking dude. And sure enough, Ice Cave Tour was great. And I was like to my buddy Tim, "Hey, we're gonna have good karma, and we're gonna see the Northern Lights now." And sure enough, at the end of the trip, we saw it. Um, Anything else bad? I had one trip where I went a little bit early to Scandinavia and only had like 2 or 3 hours of darkness. The aurora oval tilts towards Canada, so it's in late August. You can still have 4 or 5 hours of darkness in Canada, but in Scandinavia, you're only going to have an hour or two. So there's some learning curves, um, and luckily, I've been for the most part, been pretty good. Um, I do one trip in September, early September in Canada, where I can actually pack into the Northern Lights, and that's what I really really enjoy. It's the park behind me here at Tombstone, and I did do a face plant backpacking on a long day. I like dinged my head and like had a bruise, but I powered through. So yeah, so
very,
that's
very
that's
nice. Those poor Japanese women. The Japanese culture is so polite. Like, they had to have really been in trouble if they're gonna be banging at the door, you know? It goes completely
they
against.
were in trouble. They were definitely in trouble. They got dropped off by a bus to this glacial lagoon, which is kind of a tourist spot. I think they thought there was going to be some kind of hostel there, and there was nothing. And we actually went to bed. We saw some headlights flashing in the windows, like looked like somebody was trying to break into like the office. And we didn't
Yeah.
think much of it. We just went to bed, and they I think they had like a neck pillow and a thin blanket, and that's all they had.
Oh
And it
god.
was it was it was February in Iceland, and they were so yeah. We we were very happy to help them out, and like they were so apologetic, but we got the seats front seats reclined a little bit, cranked up that heat, and it makes a good story.
Ah, it's great. What, what if we can kinda, like, derail a little bit and talk about you, what was 14-year-old James doing, um, at age 14? Like, this seems like a job that you wouldn't like, "Oh, I wanna grow up to be a accountant or be a Northern Lights tour guide."
Yeah, what was I doing? I was living in the Bay Area, playing some tennis, kind of figuring out life. And one thing with me is whatever I do, I seem to get really deep into it. So when I was 14, I was in high school, doing the normal high school thing, but I was always a little bit alternative. And so me and my friends at lunch were really into hacky sack or footbag. And we got pretty good, and we met some professional footbaggers in Berkeley, San Francisco, Palo Alto, who were like, come to these tournaments. We'll show you how to footbag. And like, sure enough, we got better and better and better. And like by the end of our high school, we went to the world. I didn't compete, but we went to the world championships of footbag, and we're like
Wow.
in Golden, Colorado, hacky sacking and learning all these things. So, I was always a little bit on a little bit of a different scope. So, I was doing hacky sack in college. I started playing ultimate frisbee and won a couple national championships playing ultimate frisbee. And so I was always kind of like doing active, kind of fun alternative things. But for the most part, my parents were trying to like, okay, you got to go to school, you got to get a degree, you got to go to college. So I was on the more traditional path, but always trying to find a little way to like sneak out and like, you know, um, go take a block of ice and go ice blocking down some golf course in the middle of the night with my friends. So there was always that part of me. But yeah,
I'm unfamiliar with ice blocking. I
you don't
assume
know
just by
ice
the
blocking?
no.
Maybe it's a California thing. Um, so you get you get those blocks of ice you get from the grocery store.
Yeah.
You get one of the blocks of ice, you put a little towel on top of it, and you go in the middle of the night to a golf course, preferably on a steep uh, fairway. So the grass is really thin. And if you can go when it's like a little bit wet, like it's been raining, and you sit on the block of ice, you just shoot down that hill, man.
Okay.
It is so much fun. It is so much fun. So we would do that a couple times a year when we get wet out. We'd go get ice blocks and like sneak out in the middle of the night and go ice blocking. One of my favorite stories was we went ice blocking and had a great. It was raining that night, and I stripped down to my white. I used to wear whitey tighties, to my whitey tighties, and I was driving home in this in the Bay Area, kind of a nicer neighborhood, but I had a front headlight burnout, and I got pulled over by a cop. And so I pull over, I'm completely wet in just my whitey tighties, grass clippings all over me. And the cop like comes and is like, your headlights burn out. And he's just like, takes one look at me and just was like, go fix it, and just walks back to the car. And I don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
So yeah, ice blocking. I think if you're under 18, it's probably a good thing. Over 18, you might get charged with trespassing, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I know it's some of these innocent things that like, what? You're in your late 30s. What are you doing breaking into a golf course? Go to jail. That's it. You're going to jail, man. Like,
Yeah, uh, it, yeah, ice blocking's fun. People would do, toilet paper people's houses. We would go ice blocking. So whatever.
yeah, that's a little less nefarious, that's pretty that seems manageable. Like,
Yeah,
unless you're the groundskeeper of the golf course and there's this big, like, frozen
yeah.
streak
They
that's been
don't.
run out.
They don't yeah, when you get out of there, you're like, okay, it's time to go. Time to
Yeah.
go. We had our fun.
James, have you ever had any, like, near-death experiences?
Near death experiences, this whole COVID thing, but besides that, no. I've been actually, so I'm actually, of our friend group, I'm the one that's actually pretty cautious and sane. So, I've never had any like crazy near death experiences. I had my appendix out when I was 9. I've never really broken a bone. I usually stay away from the ledges when I'm traveling. I'm not a huge rock climber or anything, so I'm a little bit grounded in those regards. Um,
That's good.
and
It's
yeah,
not a bad thing to not have, like, a near-death experience story. Yeah, one time I drank, poison in science class. I don't know. Yeah, that's good.
sorry, I'm,
That's
sorry, I'm
not a
not
bad thing.
more exciting for your podcast, but yeah.
No, no, I'm often surprised that people do have a near-death experience. They're like, "Yeah, yeah, I did this I did this thing that was really dumb." Yeah. So, no, that's not a bad thing, I guess is what I'm getting at. Uh, Can you tell me about like maybe the worst breakup you had? Like the one of the worst like have you ever had a
Yeah, yeah,
heart-wrenching
yeah. So,
rug pulled out of
so like
your
a lot of my, I really enjoyed travel, and so that's like one thing that's I've just tried to do over the years. And I had this kind of rocky relationship with someone, and we were planning to go to Southeast Asia, and this was back when swine flu was happening, and like right before the trip, my partner, who were definitely like rocky, got swine flu, and I nursed her back to health, and anyway, I was like, "Are you sure you still want to go to Southeast Asia?" And she's like, "Yeah, I want to go, want to go." I'm like, "Okay." So ended up going to Southeast Asia, and right away she started acting erratically, and I was like, "What is going on? What is going on?" And we eventually, like in the like day 3 or 4 of the trip, um, we just kind of like it was like this is nuts. Like you're not making any sense. We broke up, and I'm like, I'm going home, and I flew home. Turned out she was like had someone else that she had recently started like fooling around with, who was going to meet her in Southeast Asia, and her goal was to go out with me and then like break up with me and then meet somebody else. And like I like uncovered the plot and emailed the both of them and was like, hey, just so you know, I hope you're having a good time. You guys made yourselves look really, really bad right now. Have a great trip. So
Oh
that's
my
my worst
gosh.
breakup. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think part of for me is like absorbing the energy and redirecting it, and that time in my life I started getting into yoga because like my balance and like my kind of flow was off, and so I started doing yoga and like turned out this could be bad breakup was actually probably a positive in my life because A, I don't want to be with this person, thankfully. And B, it like brought this like healing element of yoga into my life. So that was kind of cool.
That's really cool. Were you after or during the breakup, or I guess after the breakup, were you alone at that point in
Yeah,
another okay, cool.
back home. I was back home. I had a housemate, and I have a really good group of friends here in Santa Barbara.
Oh, I mean, like, on the trip, when that breakup when that breakup happened on the trip, were you then
Well,
alone?
well, I was with her, and then like I was like, okay, I'm gonna fly back. Like our trip's done. Like I changed my ticket and was like, I'm out of here. So like I was just like, okay, cool. I came to Southeast Asia to be with you and travel around. That's not happening. I'm going back home. And
Yeah,
she's like, okay. So I just changed my ticket and flew. And I had been to Southeast Asia before, so I'd been to Thailand, and um, so I was ready to just kind of like start anew.
sure. Yeah, I get it. I have traveled alone and, not out of a breakup or anything. Actually, you know what? The last time I did, it was pretty fresh after a breakup. But what's funny about that is, you get a lot of solitude because unless you speak the language in the country that you're at, you have a lot
Yeah.
of time to like reflect on yourself. It's quiet. You don't know what people are saying. You can't engage. You do spend a lot of time internally. I journaled a lot because that was sort of like my conversation during that
Yeah.
trip. But that can be healing too in itself to like, wow, like you really just kind of people watching and taking in the culture and having no one to be
Yeah.
like, isn't that cool? Isn't that cool over there? Like, or what do you think about that? Do you want to go get a cup of coffee
Well,
or something? It's just
a lot of my travels are solo travels because I
uh,
concoct these ideas that are pretty crazy. It's like, hey, like you want to go take 2 weeks off of me and like fly up to remote Yukon, Canada and backpack around with 10 days of food on your pack. It like starts eliminating the people really quickly. It's like, okay, 2 weeks off. Okay, we're down to like quarter of my friends. Okay, do you want to hike in the cold Yukon in early September? Okay, so there's maybe like 2 or 3 people, and it's like, okay, well, I think I'm going to have to do this by myself. So, and I've done that trip 3 times now, and I want to go back and do it again. So, I if I didn't do stuff by myself, I wouldn't be where I am. And I'm learning, but and learning, and then we'll eventually hopefully share what is easily doable for other people. But a lot of my travels um, are solo trips because I wouldn't be able to do it otherwise, because I'm very specific what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it, and yeah, and so that's what it is.
Yeah, love that, man. I love that. I would be in, by the way. I am totally for it's easy to say, like sitting at home in this tiny little warm booth and going, I would like to do that. I would like to get me out there and be like, why did I agree to this? This is
It
ridiculous.
actually, the people don't realize in September, or especially early September, it's not that cold yet. And so we'll have nights in Santa Barbara that are colder than they are up in Canada or Alaska in early September. Like January, February in Santa Barbara can be pretty cold certain nights. And you have other nights up in early September where there's no snow on the ground. The days are still pretty long and it can be pretty comfortable. So, I'll be shooting with no gloves on, and it can be very enjoyable. So, you know, the other thing to realize is in the summer, June, July, August, there's 24 hours of light, so you can't see the northern lights in those months. And then in the winter, um, late November, December, January, early February, it's the weather changes really quickly and it's chaotic. So I've kind of narrowed down this late February, March, early April kind of winter, and then this late August, September, early October as my windows. And early September, that's when people who want to see the northern lights but are like scared of the cold, that's when you got to go. Like find the place. Usually Alaska is the easiest to get to. Usually as decent early September, and I mean we could do a podcast and you'd be comfortable.
Nice, very nice. That sounds ideal. I like that. I always forget
Yeah,
about that whole like in Alaska, the whole like there's not day there's daylight for like 2 or 3 hours at a certain point, and the other way around. I had a friend that lived there, and he was saying he would go. You get this like weird charge of energy, and people would be like mowing their lawns at 3 a.m. Hey, how's it going? Hello. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's just kind of normal up there, which is
yeah,
kind of cool. Do you do you have a hard time let me ask you a personal question. Do you have a hard time sleeping if there's light? Like if things are illuminated, do you need it to be completely dark? For me, whenever there's a full moon, I often have trouble. Like I have to pull the blinds down because I'll wake up and it's just light in the bedroom. I am curious if that would bug me if this is going on for 2 or 3 days. The
yeah.
aurora.
So me personally, I some of my trips, like my backpacking trips, I'll intentionally have rest or nap days where I sleep in the middle of the day. I'll have an eye patch, and I'll intentionally like try to get extra rest because I know I'm going to be out at night. Um, Other trip, like most of my trips, I'm doing Airbnbs or staying in a van or a hotel or something, and like my phone is like the issue. Like I'll stare at this like screen emitting light, and that's often more of a problem than the extra daylight. I can draw blinds, I can put masks on. I do talk with people like up in Yellowknife. I've been to Yellowknife a couple of times in Canada, and they prefer it when it's like 2 or 3 hours of daylight. It's like dark all the time, and they get weirded out when it's like so light all the time. So there are um, concerns about that. When you get to the far north, they'll have the double blinds, like one blind and then another blind to like make sure it gets dark. So you do what you can, but you know, I'm good when I don't have digital devices. That's really a big problem of mine personally, like this whole like digital screen light emission thing. So I kind of like it when I do these trips where I just put everything away. I like hike, eat, sleep, have dinner, maybe try to take another nap, and then like try to stay up all night taking pictures.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, the sleep mask pretty much takes care of everything, right? Just pack that if you think you're gonna have issues.
Yeah,
To
I mean, yeah, do what you can. You do what you can, and sometimes I'll just, I'll lie and I don't fall asleep, but I know I'm getting some rest, and when I go out at night, it's kind of exhilarating and like kind of lifts my spirits up, and then maybe the next day I crash really hard for a little bit. So
yeah.
um, usually I can maintain for a while.
Yes, and also if you're hiking, like, you're exerting your body, you're gonna it doesn't matter if there's gonna be light outside or not, like, you're probably pretty freaking tired at the end of it, right?
Yeah. So the picture behind me was one of those trips where it's a really rocky, difficult park, and everybody's hiking and sleeping, and I had built in some rest days, and me and this guy from Alberta like woke up like at like 1 in the morning, and we're like the clouds are clearing, and we start seeing some lights, and we got out and we saw an incredible northern light storm, and we woke up in the morning and like we're asking people, did anybody see what we saw? Everybody was asleep. Like nobody saw it, and we were just like, "Oh my god, you guys, Northern Light storm of the year potentially."
Yeah,
And so there is something to be said about being the slacker who just chills, and like part of the creativity thing is like people who are super organized on the go, sometimes they miss that creativity thing. And if you're a total slacker, yeah, you're going to miss that creativity, but there's like a happy medium where
right.
you kind of want to be organized, but you also kind of just want to be like, I'm just going to chill at the camp today because like that's what I need to do. And people kind of like look at you like side eyed, like, what are you doing, dude? I'm like, and then I show them the pictures in the morning. They're like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. So yeah, it's fun.
Very cool. At the beginning of the podcast, we talked a little bit about, like, the science of the Northern Lights. Do you or have you noticed anybody getting, like, spiritual about the Northern Lights? Like, really kind of, like, losing themselves once they see this magical visual thing, being unenhanced by psychedelics
Yeah.
or enhanced by psychedelics for that matter?
For the most part, I'm usually kind of in a remote spot by myself in a dark area. So I'm not usually around people. I have had campers who are singing like Norwegian songs, and I've been in Norway and looked down, and there's like a little village having a little festival, and there's
Cool.
lights going on, and they're like singing and dancing, and they're just having fun. Um, Me personally, I have this like weird connection of like I'm all by myself, but I totally feel connected to the world. And I also it's just kind of really enlivening. It's like, wow, I might be in the most beautiful place in the world right now. Like that's kind of special. Like I don't think anything else is going to be as beautiful as this right now. So it's just that's kind of cool. And I mean, it just kind of like this emitted from millions of miles away. It's traveling through space and like hitting Earth. It's just like this like kind of mind bending uh, deal where it really kind of puts things in perspective. It's like, dude, we're like this little drop in this pool of the galaxy. So, uh, but usually it's in these remote areas where there's no one else around, and it's more of like connection of just like with the universe, and also just like thinking about friends and people and wanting to share this thing with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fortunate to live in New Mexico on like, right on the cusp of, like, a little mountainside where, the Colorado, Rockies sort of end is sort of where I'm at. So I'm able to look up and see the stars really clearly, and it gives me that same sort of perspective of like, wow, we are nothing. Like we're just a bunch of like it's so vast out there. It blows my mind constantly. Just to it's a constant reminder every time I look up, like how
Yeah.
insignificant, you know.
I can only do the Northern Lights thing at certain times a year. I love I love meteor showers. I love going out and just laying down and like seeing, you know, flashes across the sky, and yeah, and having that moment of just being like, wow, so thankful for being part of this grand thing. It's really, it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, man. Wow. James, you're crushing it, man. This is the part in the podcast where if you've got anything that you feel like we didn't cover that was important, you have the platform right now, buddy. If not, pass it back to me and we'll keep going.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of in some interesting times right now where, you know, I- I've been kind of on the go from when Northern Lights, I started seeing them in 2016. I was kind of on the go until early 2020. And we're kind of, with COVID, just kind of shut things down, and everybody's kind of doing some introspection. And I think we're kind of realizing that experiences and sharing moments with friends are really important. And so what I've kind of done the last 5 years is kind of reinforce that. So, you know, I think it kind of brings meaning and happiness to life, of like wanting to do things and putting things out on the horizon. Like, hey, I want to do that. That's inspiring, and that's going to make me more efficient and lift up my spirits. So it's been a difficult time. So I want to kind of have something to look forward to and do it. So um, in terms of, yeah, so wanting to go see this thing is totally doable. I I shared the KP index, shared the Aurora Oval, shared my website, but it's doable, and you want to see aurora storms, uh, and yeah, and like, for me, I need something to look forward to keep inspired. Otherwise, I kind of like, the world's a little bit difficult. So, I've been replacing seeing the Northern Lights with doing local stuff. The last thing I want to kind of point out is the sun has like essentially a heartbeat. And I'm not like a really woo woo person or anything, but the solar minimum was 2020. The next solar maximum is 2025. So there's going to be more frequency and stronger northern lights every year we get closer to 2025. And so that kind of helped me put 2020 in the I got nothing to do bank. Was like, okay, this is the worst year and I can't travel, and like anywhere I do go I got to wear a mask or whatever, and they won't even let me into Canada or Scandinavia. So I
Yeah.
kind of able to put that away, but I know moving forward every year is going to get better to 2025, and I'm just going to get more experienced and better about doing these trips and seeing incredible stuff. So 2025 is the next solar maximum.
Cool. Very cool, man. That's amazing stuff. I'm really looking forward to your trips that you're going to
Yeah.
be hosting in the future. And if anybody's interested, there'll be a hyperlink in the show notes. You can just click right to your site. So I'll link people up
Thank
with
you.
you there.
Yeah.
James, in tradition of the podcast, we always end with a poop story. Have you ever pooped your pants or have a poop story for my shitty podcast?
Well, I definitely have pooped my pants. Uh, as a photographer, sometimes you do these early morning sessions, and like I've started carrying toilet paper in my camera bag now, because
Oh
like
boy.
before, when I was a little inexperienced, you just like, oh, you got to run out, and like all of a sudden it's like, it's like 5:30, you're catching a sunrise, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, my lower intestines on the 6:15 train here. But I have to incorporate the Northern Lights, and one of my favorite trips is I took a good friend from Santa Barbara to see the Northern Lights, and it was one of my early trips, and we went in March to Iceland, and we actually took this budget airline called Wow Air, and we got tickets like a month in advance. They were dirt cheap, and we
Yeah.
flew Wow Airlines, and I didn't know the weather, but there happened to be the largest snowstorm in 86 years in Iceland. The night, and we flew in on a red eye that night. We get in, and it was chaos. There was like 8-foot high snowbanks. You couldn't get around. We eventually got our rental van later that night, but the day was chaotic. Anyway, we didn't see a cloud for a week. Like the storm came and just took all the cloud energy out. And I timed it with the Northern Lights storm. So we had like 7 nights in a row of Northern Lights. And near the end of the trip, my good buddy Sean, he does that bulletproof coffee. You know that bulletproof coffee stuff. And so he flew with a stick of butter in his bag from California to Iceland. And he's like, I'm like, you flew with a stick of butter? And he's like, yeah, we're gonna make bulletproof coffee. So we're like, we're drinking this bulletproof coffee. I don't think it's really good for your lower intestine. That could just be me, but whatever. Anyway, we get to this one area called the Trolls Rock. And like I'm all getting my gears ready. It's like at night. And Sean's like, I'll be down there in a second, he's doing his thing. And so I just, it's March, it's icy. I like make my way down to this Trolls Rock and set up to take some pictures. And like 15 minutes later, Sean comes down and he's like, dude, I impact sharded. And I was like, what? He's like, I slipped on the ice and there was an impact and I just sharded. And I was just like, what, dude? You impact sharded? And like we're in rural Iceland and like he can't do anything with his underwear. So he
I also wasn't familiar with the term, by the way, impact shard. I was like,
I mean, I
I
think
mean,
it's the only time. I think it's the only like I've never heard of an impact shirt anywhere else. But it was like this culmination of like Northern Lights and bulletproof coffee and like Iceland and like slipping and falling and anyway, that was the so we have this impact chart joke that goes around. But pooping your pants as a photographer, I think it's a rite of passage. But like having your buddy impact chart in Iceland, that's like that's for real.
yeah, that's next level. Also, shame on Bulletproof for not having like a disclaimer of how, like, this is a diuretic, okay? Like it's gonna speed things up and internally, so don't fall
Seriously,
down. Yeah, yeah.
seriously.
Oh my gosh. You almost need like a bulletproof diaper. Like,
Yeah,
huh?
I mean,
There's
they
a market.
probably, they probably should have a little something. Buy 10 bulletproof coffees and get a pair of underwear free. I don't know.
That's it. They should team up with like MeUndies or an underwear company or something like that. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. No whitey tidies at all. It's just a waste of money. Like it has to be dark colored, underpants.
smart.
Oh man, I didn't think we would come full circle with the whitey tidies, but there it is. There it is. That's good storytelling right there. Oh my gosh. James, thank you
Yeah,
so much for doing the podcast. You were a blast. You knocked it out of the park, man. I'd love to have you back on sometime when you're ready. And that's it for us. Play us that shitty ukulele.